So now we're going in depth on what the new year means when it comes to your finances and money. Many Americans say they continue to feel like they're struggling to afford things. And the Trump administration says just hold on a little longer. A big tax cut is about to kick in with the expectation that many will have big refund checks. Joining me on the program to speak unedited with a look at what 2026 has in store is BOK Chief Financial Investment Strategist Steve Wyatt with a look at money and the policies. Back on the program with a look into 2026 and what it could hold financially, especially in the first few months, is Steve Wyatt with BOK Financial. Thanks for joining me, Steve. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I love being back in the studio again.
Happy New Year. I guess we could say yes.
And let's hope it is a happy New Year. That's right.
And I was going to ask, the Trump administration says this should be a happy New Year for taxpayers. The big, beautiful bill will kick in during tax time. We've heard no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, but this is actually going to happen for people. Is that right?
Yeah, it is. And look, here's an important part of why we are more optimistic as we enter 2026 from an economic standpoint, just looking at economic growth. And we went through a lot last year. Think about, going through the inelegant rollout of the tariffs, which at one point we were worried about a recession. Stocks were down 20%. We were looking at a potential bear market there. And then over the course of the year, what we were able to do is kind of price out some of the worst case scenarios. Our economy remained very resilient. And so as we ended 2025, stock markets were near record highs. The Fed's cutting rates. They've cut rates at their last 3 meetings. That's going to be additive to us going next year. But let's talk about the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act that you mentioned, and specifically because there are some things that are getting ready to happen there that we think will be additive to growth going forward. The first is, as you mentioned, not only did we extend the tax rates as we extended the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, we added some sweeteners to that. No taxes on tips, no taxes on overtime, tax deduction for seniors. There's even a tax deduction if you on a loan if you use it to buy an American-made car. There's a lot of things in there for consumers. But interestingly, the IRS did not change the tax withholding table for 2025. And what that's going to mean, Rick, is in the first quarter of next year, if we think about February, March, April, tax refund season is going to be significantly bigger than it was last year. We're making a bet that U.S. consumers are going to do what they've always done with their tax refunds, and they're going to spend some of that, a good portion of that. So we should see a spur to economic growth from the consumer in the first quarter. And then on the business side, this is where, as we think about what President Trump's trying to accomplish from a trade policy, it's kind of a carrot and a stick kind of approach is how I would describe this. The stick has been the tariffs. I go back to think about back when you were in business school. If you want less of something, tax it more. If you want more of something, tax it less. We want fewer imports, so let's tax it more with tariffs. We want more stuff built here, so let's provide a tax incentive for companies to build plant and equipment. And that's what we're doing with the extension of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. So we're thinking it's not only is this a benefit for consumers, this is going to be a benefit for companies. There's a time lag, and I think this is what we've struggled with a little bit, Rick. Tariffs impact us immediately. They have had some impact on inflation, though not as much as we had feared. But building new plant and equipment takes time. And so there is this time lag, but ultimately we think that we're going to see the economy broaden. The AI trade drove 2026 for a big portion of the year. The Mag 7 stocks that were kind of leading the market higher. We think that broadens this year. It's going to involve more companies. It's going to involve mid and small cap companies in addition to large cap. Bottom line is we think the economy overall will broaden and we'll see growth faster next year than we did in 2025.
So I've heard Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent talk about, well, this could be inflation relief. I think he's saying $50 billion back to taxpayers. Is this enough to ease the pain of inflation we've been having? Even if it's just a little bit.
Inflation is just economically, we just understand it's an insidious tax that hurts those that can least afford it the most. And so we still have an affordability issue here. The aggregate pace of inflation since the onset of the pandemic has been higher than wage gains. The offset to that is people that have owned their homes have been investing in stocks. Those assets have gone up in value faster than inflation. So we have this differentiated outcome from an inflation standpoint. Our view is that next year, the big driver of inflation in the CPI and the PCE, which is what the Fed looks at, is housing, it's shelter. And we are seeing home prices start to decline or flatten out a little bit. Real-time rents are starting to come down. So that's enough, we think, to offset part of the issue with the tariffs. Here's the other important part as we move through 2026. This is where tariffs are different than inflation. It's a one-time price increase, not ongoing. So as we lap the inflation numbers from last year into next year, tariffs aren't going to go up another 10 or 15%. They're the same. So you'll see, we think over the next 12 months, inflation is going to come down. We don't think it gets all the way to the Fed's 2% target. And we don't think the Fed's going to have to ease a whole lot next year, but we wouldn't look for rates to go up next year.
Do you think the tech stocks, and is this a 2025 bubble? Does this look like a bubble, or is this going to continue into 2026?
Look, it's an active debate and one that we have internally as well. Certainly, if you just look at the price action of some of these big stocks, for those of us that lived through the internet bubble and the tech bubble of the late 99s and 2000, which I did, some of those price movements start to look a little bit familiar, and you get a little bit concerned about it. There's some big differences, we think, in how this is structured. The big tech companies in today's market are making a lot of money. The stocks are not cheap from a valuation standpoint. They're nowhere close to where they were back in 99 and 2000. So we're not as concerned about a bubble being that it's a bubble and it will deflate rapidly. What we may see next year is that the growth rate of those companies starts to slow a little bit. That's what we're thinking is going to happen. That doesn't mean that the prices of those stocks have to crash, but they probably aren't going to go up at the same rate as we get into next year.
Let me ask you this, as you're planning for 2026, Chairman Powell is done in May. President Trump installs what we believe will be a loyal pick as chairman, possibly.
Say it. He will. He's not going to put somebody there that he doesn't absolutely know is going to be on the same page as him.
How much of the president pretty much controlling the Fed chair impact your outlook for 2026?
You know, that's another active point of discussion internally, this idea of how dangerous is it if we politicize the Fed, what that may mean from a rate standpoint. It's clear the president wants much lower rates. That's fine. Every president has wanted lower rates. How he's done it, and the fact that we're playing this out in the days of social media, where when I give presentations, I've got to check my Truth Social feed to see what I'm going to say in my next presentation, is different than what it's been in the past. And so it is true that President Trump's going to have an ability to put more people on the Federal Reserve Board than past presidents had, and that they're probably going to fall in line, at least initially, with what he thinks. But longer term, Rick, here's the thing. I think the bond market will be if I want to put it there, that's the other governor on this process. Because if the bond market, and we owe $37 trillion, $38 trillion, if the bond market starts to lose confidence in the independence of the Fed, or sees them making decisions that the bond market does not believe is in the best interest of them, which is keep inflation low, that's the enemy of a bondholder, it will react. And ultimately, the FOMC can vote to keep short-term rates very low, but they don't control the long end of the yield curve, and that's where I think the bond market would act as a bit of a governor on actions that are not in our best interest long-term. Is
the changing of the Fed chair, and I'm running out of time, is the changing of the Fed chair enough to tank the economy?
No.
Okay.
It wouldn't surprise me if whoever the Fed chair is, and a guy named Kevin Hassett's the on bet now, we should know very shortly who it is. But it wouldn't surprise me if the markets don't test him a little bit. They've tested past new Fed chairs, kind of see what this person's made of. But that in and of itself is not enough to trip the economy into a recession.
Steve, thank you so much. Happy New Year again.
Rick, thank you. Happy New Year to you and to all of you as well. Thank you.